Hi, this is Andrea Michelle, and I wanted to share with you what I had offered at the Living from the Core convergence that took place last month, hosted by Ajaya Summers. I realized that it would be a really good primer for what's some of the things that are emerging for me in terms of my astrology and just what's coming through me that is incorporating more of a somatic approach to astrology. And unfortunately, when I was offering it live over Zoom, over Facebook, I wasn't able, I'd never done Facebook Live before, so I wasn't able to toggle back and forth, starting with me and then sharing my screen. So you don't see me at all. So I figured it would be much better for me to redo this and start from the beginning so you can actually see the voice, the person behind the voice. And I will share my screen and my slides and share with you a little bit about what this meditation is, this breath offering in relationship to what I call the solar decans and the different layers of our consciousness. For those of you who have participated in the workshop that I did this past summer, introducing the solar decans for the first time, this will be familiar to you. But essentially, I have mapped the decans of each sign consciousness. The decans are the full 30 degrees of a sign apportioned into 10 degrees. This just kind of arose through an amalgam of my own inner work merging with my astrology and my relationship with the planets and asteroids and so on. And so I have mapped out the three decans in these different, in this different way. This is called the instinct or pan-personal. So the first 10 degrees of a sign, of any sign, relates to the instinctual and the pan consciousness, which I will talk about in a future slide here. The middle decan is the self or personal or self-consciousness. And then the last 10 degrees is our social wiring or our trans-consciousness. And they're always in communication with each other. And we're, you could say, becoming more fully fluent and in conversation with all three is how we become a more fully embodied, individuated self with a capital S here. And it's always an ongoing process. There's always an ongoing conversation. So I wanted to just introduce the three axes of the body that I refer to when I talk about the different layers of consciousness here. So the left and right axis, the axis of left and right of the body, is what I relate to the pan consciousness. The front and back axis is what I relate to the self-consciousness. And the above and below is what I relate to trans consciousness. Okay. So the left and right axis, referring to or relating with pan consciousness. This contains our primal impulse of the sign energy. Pan consciousness, as in pandemic, is basically the relationship with all of life. It is how we know ourselves connected to the earth and all of our kin before we even know ourselves as human. It's what the indigenous refer to as being in relationship with our kin, our brothers, our brother bear, our sister river, our father sky. It's all our relationship. And it is actually an experience that we can have in our being, not just some ideal or fanciful or poetic metaphor. There is a strata of our being in our pan consciousness where this is as evident and obvious as the desk that I am knocking on here, or as solid as my hand in my other hand. It's something visceral and true that we can know. So the primal impulse of a sign, let's just say Cancer, what would be the primal instinctual drive of the sign of Cancer? One way of looking at it is the drive to know myself, to have self-intimacy. That's the sign of Cancer, to be intimate with myself, to be intimate and care for all of life through me, to know my deep care of life, Cancer, as me. Now, we haven't even gotten to the self-consciousness yet. But already there's this sense of, because Cancer relates so strongly with the initial cardinal impulse to distinguish myself as a self, there is that innately in the consciousness of Cancer itself. So the primal drive, you could say, to know myself as caring or to care for myself, could be one of the instinctual drives in the pan-consciousness of Cancer. This is where we are inherently grounded in the greatest sense of belonging in the pan-consciousness. Now, we're not talking just about Cancer. I just used Cancer as an example. Our greatest sense of belonging through interconnection with Earth and our other than human kin, like I said, animals, plants, minerals, elements. Once we reawaken our root system within the coherent matrix of the Earth. We are of the Earth. Our bodies are of the Earth. We receive the transmission from the sun, from the stars, from the sky. It lands in the Earth. We hold it in our bodies. This is also in our pan-consciousness where we may be most impulsive or autonomic. When we are not conscious of our drives, of our instinctual wisdom, it just becomes automatic reactions and impulses. Okay? So the idea of anything coming into consciousness is our becoming aware of something. That's the first step. The second step is, how intimate do I want to be? How intimate do I want to live from that place of consciousness? And I consider the pan-consciousness as relating with the lower strata of our body, our gut, our womb, our perineum, even our anus, and also relating to just the lower extremities of our body, you could say. And the fundamental intelligence or wisdom is that of instinct, our instinctual wisdom. The front and back axis correlates with our self-consciousness, okay? And it's the place where we first identify as a human I, separate, where we come out of the matrix of all of life, where we are just one of many, and we start to differentiate as, oh, I am a human. You are a horse. You are a fern. This is a mountain. This is agate. This is, well, even before we even get there, but just the different kingdoms of the earth, meaning like as in kingdom, phylum, if you learned that in science class, if you recall. This is where we first distinguish ourselves as a human, as a unique human, a singular human. And this is where our personal karmic identity of past, present, and future, as well as our ancestral inheritances, lives. This is where we may feel most isolated and separate, because the ego is also founded here. And the ego, its number one drive is to stay with what's known. And the ego how we identify as a separate unit. And part of the development of a human is to know ourselves as a unique aspect of the whole. So there's the paradox of, how do I differentiate out of the matrix of the pan consciousness while still remaining connected to the pan consciousness? It's not an either or, it's a both and. So unless we are connected with our pan consciousness, we're going to be more valenced toward isolation. And that is, you could say, the major dis-ease or dysfunction of our current state of affairs as a species in humanity. So self-consciousness is also the strata where the matrix of codependence resides through the amplified energy of fear, tribalism, gaslighting, anything that has to do with me versus you, us versus them, either you're with me or you're against me. That comes into this tribalism that can also be represented here. This sense of an unhealthy codependence versus an interdependence. And again, being situated more deeply in our pan consciousness can support more of the fabric of interdependence to emerge rather than codependence. And the places in the body where this axis lives most strongly is the heart, and right beneath that, the solar plexus. And this is the place of wisdom or intelligence of differentiation. And then we have the above or below axis, which I refer to correlating with the trans consciousness, okay? And this contains our wiring as social beings and where we support and build dynamic cultures through collaboration between our unique gifts and those of others, okay? So once again, if we look at this lemniscate or figure 8, there's an open spaciousness of more than just the personal self in the pan-personal and more than just the personal self in the transpersonal. And yet the personal is the connection, sort of like the lightning rod for the intelligences of these two to come and form a distinction through us uniquely. We are, it's like, if this is the root system, this is the trunk, and these are the branches and the leaves. And the fruit is the relationship between all three, the fruiting body of this in whatever stage this is in, the emergence of greater and greater coherence, congruence, just relationality of all three. That's the fruit that comes from working with all three. So this is also in the trans consciousness where we honor and give back to the earth through building systems and cultures that sustain the primal wisdom that nourished and inspired us at the start in our pan consciousness. This is also where we are connected to our star tribes in the trans consciousness axis. And by the way, where these arrows intersect, you can ignore that for the purposes of what I'm sharing here, because the trans consciousness, where I feel it lives in our body primarily, although it lives everywhere, its primary center is actually behind the eyes, in that cavern of the brain, where the pineal and the pineal are active together. So this can also be where we are most dissociated, out of our bodies, in the realm of possibility, potential, but not very grounded. And this again relates with the pineal or the pituitary and the intelligence or wisdom of our genius, our unique genius, which is ours, but it's a gift. It's a gift from Source that comes through us uniquely to be received and embodied to the best of our ability and lived through us as a gift for not just ourselves, but for others. So again, we have this correlation in the trans consciousness of the head, of the self consciousness of the heart, of the pan consciousness of the hara. And within each center, there are micro centers of the other two. But these are the primary centers. So the head is related to our genius and the trans consciousness. The heart is related to love and the self consciousness. And the hara is related to power and our pan consciousness. And they're this all together flowing dynamic system, ever flowing, coming back into the roots and the branches, coming back into the trunk as the stabilizing force that bridges the trans and the pan to the personal, the self. Each needs to be in dynamic flow with the others to really bring its fullest potential online. And some of us, maybe even in my descriptions of this thus far, some of you may recognize, oh yeah, I tend to be more balanced here, less here. There's not a deficiency here. It's we all have the capacity to build out whatever is less familiar to us. So for those of us who tend to be balanced more in the trans consciousness, it might behoove us to really, really focus on the planets or angles or asteroids that land in the first 10 degrees of a sign, which reflect our pan consciousness. And we can develop a capacity to strengthen our relationship with those planets in that way, which this breath meditation that I'm going to share in just a moment provides us. So this breath practice, I'm going to speak to it first, and then I'm welcoming you to try it on your own, either with me here, or you'll have the recording, you can review it and just play with it on your own. I said we did it twice for the convergence because of the time, but there's no time restriction here, so we're going to do it 3 times. But I want to mention before you do that, if there is anything to focus on, you could say, or to watch out for in this gentle breath practice, the amount of times that we do it is not as important as the quality of presence in the breath practice. So in other words, if you do one, if let's say you're working with your pan consciousness and you can only do one breath without starting to leave, then just do one and be complete. And that's an act of self-love, self-kindness, and sovereignty to say, no more. If I start to leave, or if I start to get scared, or if I start to go to my head, if I do 2 breaths in the pan consciousness, that's a sign that 1 is perfect for me right now. And that is self-honoring. So there's 0 wrong, or we're not putting any kind of intention to achieve a certain number. I use 3 because I like the number 3. And it tends to be just something to work with. But if you find that 3 is too much at first, you might not. It might be easy. And if it's too much, and you're available to be honest with yourself around that, just stick with however much you can stay in any number of breaths that you do. And that's, again, an act of self-love and empowerment. So we're going to start with the self-conscious, the center, the heart, and the solar plexus, which is the space in front and back. Okay? We're going to breathe from the space in front and back, however far from the body or close to the body it feels accurate and natural. You might feel that the back of your body, the space is a lot closer because we don't tend to really work with or orient to the back plane of our body much, so that's fine. So if you feel like the space in front of you is further away from your body than the space behind you, no problem. It doesn't have to be an equal ratio, in other words. We're just looking to just gently tap into where the space is in front and back, okay? We breathe in from the space in front and back, and we gently exhale into our heart and solar plexus, and then let the breath just move throughout our body on its own. We don't need to force it. We don't need to use our eyes, our inner sight to move the breath. We're just letting the breath, the wisdom, intelligence of the breath itself, take care of the dispersing of our breath. And then at the end of the exhale, we breathe in through our body, in through the heart, solar plexus, and then out into the front and back space again. And again, the number of times is not as important as how relaxed you can be without efforting in doing this. And if 3 times is great, wonderful. If 2 times is great, wonderful. If 1 time is what you do, perfect. I would just stick with 3 at the maximum for now. You can explore more than that later on, okay? Okay, so I'm going to do this now. You can join me. Lightly holding our intention in the heart and the solar plexus, and then letting go. Just breathing in front and back. Any emotion arises, that's great. Thoughts arise, that's great. You just let them be there, and you just stay gently in your heart, solar plexus center. And when you are complete with however many you do, you just relax. You might just want to take a relaxing deep inhale, exhale, and just stay for a minute in that center. Or just let it flow. You're just lightly holding the intention of the center. You don't have to fixate on it. And when you are ready, we're going to move to the transconscious space, which is the head. This is the above and the below space, so we're rooting in from the earth and the sky into that space, that cavern in between and back of our eyes. Okay, we're breathing in from above and below into that center and gently releasing, letting the breath go throughout the whole body. And at the end of the breath, we breathe back in from our body into that center and gently back out above and below. Okay? I'm going to make sure your jaw isn't tense. You can even part your lips slightly. You can keep your eyes open or closed. You just want to release tension as you do this. And once you're complete, again, just rest very lightly in that center. Maybe take another deep breath and exhale. And then just stay there for half a minute or a minute. You might feel warmth now in those 2 centers that we've activated. You might feel the energies starting to merge. There's no right or wrong thing that you are here to feel. It's just gently allowing and noticing. And then for the third center, the pan consciousness, the hara, like if you orient to your belly button and around that area and just below that, we're going to welcome the breath in from the spaces to the left and the right, breathing into that center, gently exhaling out throughout the body, just like we've done in the other two. At the end of the exhale, breathing back in through the body into that center and gently out left and right. Breath is so gentle. There's no forcing here. There is so much intelligence in our breath that we don't need to track or follow. We breathe autonomically on our own already. There's already intelligence latent and happening, not even latent, just happening on its own in our body that we don't have to think about. We don't have to think about digestion. We don't have to think about our heart beating. We don't have to think about breathing. All of this already holds wisdom, holds intelligence, holds us in safety and love perfectly. So now, at the end of that third breath, just again, just a breathing in and a regular exhale. And now just stay and allow all three centers that have been gently activated to speak to each other, however that looks, whether it's through sensation or emotion or energy or nothing. It might be very subtle and you don't pick up on it. Beautiful. We're not looking for anything to happen or to make anything happen. We're just staying in this space now. And you can stay here for as long as you like. Feeling rooted, sitting tall, maybe feeling a little bit more expansive in your body. Maybe this breath highlighted some places of tension, tightness. It's beautiful, whatever it is. So, for those of you who are versed in astrology, I recommend whatever sign, let's say your sun is in, and whatever decan, whether your sign, let's say your sun is at 8 degrees of Gemini. The sign doesn't really matter. It's more whether or not the sun is, is in the first decan, the second decan, or the third. So the first, from 0 to 9 is the first decan. From 10 to 19 is the second decan. From 20 to 29 is the third decan. So start with your sun if you want to. And whatever decan the sun resides in, let's just say it's the trans consciousness, the last degree. Let's say we'll make it 22. You can sit and do this beautiful breath meditation with the trans consciousness above and below. Invoking the sun, invoking your solar intelligence, love, wisdom, vitality, coming to appreciate that it resides in that particular decan for reasons that we can never understand, that are just part of the constellating wisdom of your own soul's purpose, desire for experiencing itself in that way. And then you can take your moon and work with it in whatever decan it resides in, and really, really start to play around with somatically where they live in your body and form a deeper relationship and connection with them in that way. It's such a an amazing experience how much more stable we can feel when we really bring in this gentle breath meditation into our relationship with the planets and the aspects, or the angles and the asteroids. It really, really helps to give us a sense of, wow, situating in ourselves, in our body. You can notice where, wow, I have most of my planets in the second decan of self-consciousness. That's interesting. Or I have most of them in pan consciousness. There's a whole lot to be discovered in this way. But for now, I wanted to introduce this as just an offering to, just so that you can work with it if you choose, see if it resonates for you. Email me if you have any fun experiences from this that you want to share. And I hope you enjoy it and find this exploration fruitful for you. And thank you very much for participating. And I look forward to connecting with you soon, however that looks.